That's my family fun night. That seems a bit redundant, but okay. I have played and reviewed quite a few minigames or board game simulators, and I have to say this one has some of the most elaborate and pointless setups for the games they play. The last time I saw a game go this crazy was Escape Game Fort Boyard. However, that had a reason, since it was based on a game show. This feels like two different games. One is about a family getting together to play board games, and the other one's about a bunch of people who travel through time and history playing games in them. The two do not overlap naturally. Now let's start with the craziest apartment ever. There isn't a bed or a toilet to be seen. This apartment doesn't look like anyone actually lives there. It feels like a museum. I'm trying to imagine two kids living here and not being in pieces in hours. Just look at this promo picture. This is the mess that I would expect, not the world that they show us. The whole setup is that you're playing games with your family. Now there are only 6 characters to choose from, with the very creative names of Dad, Mom, Boy, Girl, Grandpa, and Grandma. When you actually get into the game you choose, the aesthetics look nothing like this fun family game on the cover, but it has it taking place in different time periods or worlds. The complete change in direction between the two parts of the game was very jarring. It's like the people who made this game were arguing what the tone of this title should be. Should it be a crazy time travel adventure or family get together? And they just said, it, we'll do both. There are 14 games in this. Some are board games, and others are just glorified mini-games. There were some fun ones like Poker Dice, which has you play a quick version of Yahtzee. And chess is always fun to play as long as you can handle the really weird angles you play it at. You can change it to an overhead view, but then it just becomes a generic game with some generic pieces. I wish there was like a middle ground. The Goose Game they had was interesting, as I've never played that before, but it really felt like a quicker version of Little Horses, which you will know better as Sorry. Speaking of Little Horses, that was one of the games I spent the most time on because it took forever to finish. Maybe it would have been more fun with more players, but I only played with me and the computer. The biggest problem with it is its incessant need to change to a third-person view every time I would move my character. This could not be turned off, and it was so annoying. Thankfully, the other player, who was the computer, didn't get that animation. But every single time I took a turn, it showed me moving on the board, and it slowed the gameplay to a crawl. It was already dull to move around the board. Now you have to watch a cutscene every time you move. Speaking of slow-moving games, then there is Snakes and Ladders, which I think should have just been called Snakes and Ropes, because these green vines look more like ropes than ladders. I'm sure the reason they called it Snakes and Ladders is because that's its public domain name. Because I have to imagine that's how they got most of these games in this collection. Now, to be fair, this one wasn't actually the game's fault that it was boring, because I was kind of very unlucky in this one, because I got sent back to the beginning 4 times, while the computer was mostly breezing their way to the finish. There were some games I never heard of, like 9 Men Morris, which I still have no idea how to play it. They do give you instructions how to play it, but I just couldn't grasp it. I had an easier time with Othello, Chinese Checkers, and All, a name which I'm sure I just butchered. I really liked that one. It was easy to pick up and play. There are also mini games like a memory game where you have to help Quasimodo ring the right bells. That was a creative way of making a game to play. And that brings up my biggest problem with this whole collection. It's boring gameplay overall. They do a great job of setting up crazy situations to make the visual style of the games that you were playing unique to the world that you're in. But after that, it's just the most basic version. They didn't even add any unlockables or any reason to replay these games. Depending on which one you choose, you can play with up to 4 players and with as little as 2. They let you pass the controller back and forth if you don't have extra controllers, which was nice. That's my family fun night was meh. Visually, I liked it, but the gameplay was really dull. It was weird with the title with so much personality to it to drop the ball so badly when it came to the actual gameplay. It was just very frustrating. Now this is normally $24.99, and I would just skip it. These games are not bad. They're just unremarkable after you get past the interesting visuals that they're presented with. Once you start playing them, the overall looks of the game are overshadowed by the blandness of the gameplay. So I would probably just skip it.